For years, I could not figure out why Prince Harry was losing his entire mind over security. This is a man who flew Apache helicopters in Afghanistan, 2 tours, shot at by actual professional warriors. And now he's in a London courtroom year after year, lawyer after lawyer, fighting like a cornered raccoon because someone won't assign him bodyguards. And here's the part that always got me. For years, he hasn't had that taxpayer-funded detail in the UK, and nothing's happened to him. No incidents, no close calls. The guy is totally fine. So why the holy war? Why is he willing to torch what's left of his relationship with his own father over this thing? Well, I think I finally figured it out, and it's not what you think. What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda here. So I just finished reading Betrayal by Tom Bauer, the royal watcher who's written, 3 books now about his family and somehow still gets invited to fewer Christmases than I do. Anyway, I know what you're saying. Peter, you can't read. I can. It just takes me a while. But a couple of stories in there hit me like a light bulb. Not a gentle, that's interesting. More like a, that's what this is. Let me set the scene. There's a story in the book, and I'm paraphrasing here because I'm not pulling the book back off the shelf, about a younger Harry going out, getting absolutely demolished at some party. We've all been there. And the next thing he remembers, he's waking up in his own bed at home, safe, tucked in, possibly with a glass of water on the nightstand like a responsible adult had been there. Spoiler alert, a responsible adult had been there. Several of them. They just weren't him. Because everything that happened between Prince Harry blackout drunk, verticalish at a party, and Prince Harry horizontal, dehydrated at home, that whole middle section, that was the security detail. They're the ones who made sure he didn't get behind the wheel. They poured him into a car. They drove him home. They collected all his little stuff. They got him through the front door, up the stairs, and into bed. They are the reason the headline the next morning was nothing instead of something actually very bad. And that's the moment it clicked for me. The security wasn't protecting him from enemies. The security was protecting him from himself by being staff. Now sit with that, because that's the whole thesis right here. Let me unpack it. When you and I hear around-the-clock security detail, we picture Kevin Costner in The Bodyguard, earpiece, sunglasses, head on a swivel, scanning rooftops, ready to take a bullet. Very dramatic, very Whitney Houston. But that's not what this is. Let's just do the math, because the numbers actually matter here. Around-the-clock protection, like real 24/7 security, is not one guy who never sleeps. It's a minimum of 3 people doing 8-hour shifts to cover a single day. And that's the bare bones version, which assumes nobody ever gets sick, nobody takes a vacation, nobody wants to see their own kids occasionally. So realistically, you're at 6 people. And once you factor in travel, days off, and the fact that human beings are not appliances, now you're looking at 8 people. 10 people just to keep one principal covered. Security firms that do this for executives will tell you a serious 24/7 close protection package runs anywhere from $500,000 to well over $1 million a year. The high-end teams, armored cars, advanced work, the whole circus, blow past $4 million a year. So they do all the stuff, even the little stuff. It's grab my bags. It's get me to the airport. Somebody loads the luggage. Somebody drives the car. Somebody's waiting at arrivals when you land so that you never touch a suitcase or look at a parking sign. Somebody moves your things from house to house. Somebody tidies up. Somebody, I'm not kidding, closes the doors and the windows behind you. All that stuff that quietly eats the rest of us alive, the logistics, the errands, the did I lock the back door question, that's not his problem. It was never his problem. He's a man who has statistically never once stood at a baggage carousel, slowly dying inside while the bag goes around 4,000 times without your actual bag on it. And the guys doing the protecting, they know the deal. They're self-aware. They're not Secret Service. They're not securing perimeters. They're not watching your 6. They understand completely that if some actual threat materialized, sure, their job is to step in, shove the crowd back. But that crowd, it's not coming. The assassination attempt is not on the calendar. So what's left to fill the 8-hour shift? Oh, it's all the little stuff again. The bags, the doors, the glass of water at 3 a.m. It's not a security detail. It's a house staff with self-defense training. It's a concierge that can maybe bench press. And this isn't just me spitballing, by the way. The help backs me up. When Meghan and Harry first bolted to Canada, the actual Scotland Yard officers guarding them reportedly grumbled that they were being treated like, and this is their word, skivvies. Running errands, picking up groceries, fetching coffee. There were reports of these elite firearm trained protection officers doing Tim Hortons runs. A former head of Royal Protection went on record saying running errands and shopping is flat out not his job, and that their priority is supposed to be sticking to the principle like glue, and that a guy off picking up a double-double is a guy not protecting anybody. So even the bodyguards are sitting there going, I have trained for years to throw myself in front of a bullet, and today I'm choosing between oat milk and almond milk. That's not providing protection. That's a butler. Now, here's where I want to be fair, because I can be fair, or at least I say something that makes me look fair. Was there a real security concern at some point? Sure, maybe. The man's mother died being chased through a tunnel by photographers. You don't exactly walk that off. There were real threats over the years, at least that's what I've heard. I'm not pretending that the risk is always zero. The risk isn't zero for me. But risk existing, and I need a permanent staff of 10 people, fully funded by somebody else forever, are two very different sentences. And I think the second one is what we're actually watching getting litigated in a London courtroom. Because once you've lived your entire life with people who carry your bags, get you to the plane, pour you into bed, close your windows, fetch you a glass of water, you don't expect losing that as, I feel less safe. You experience it as, wait, who's going to do that now? And that answer, for the first time in his life, is, you are, buddy. Welcome to it. The rest of us just call it another day. And honestly, that's the part that I find almost relatable. Almost. Because if I had had a full pit crew since birth and somebody took it away from me in my 40s, I'd probably sue someone too. I would just also have the decency to be kind of embarrassed about it. So, is my theory reasonable? I think it's the most reasonable explanation I've heard. It's not he fears for his life. It's he's terrified of carrying his own crap. And once you see it through that lens, the bags, the doors, the drunk Uber with the Glock, the skivvies doing coffee runs, the whole thing snaps into focus. The fight was never about safety. It was about staff. And honestly, knowing it's free, that's a totally fetched deal. I'd fight for that too. So maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments if you think I am, but I'll probably still believe I'm right anyway. Peter Von Panda, out.